where you might want to use static methods. One of the most common use cases is basically to use a class to group together related functionality. So JavaScript comes with a math object built in that has a bunch of methods, right? Math.absoluteValue, math.rand or random, math.round. These are all functions that could just exist on their own, but they're grouped together in a usable object. So one common design pattern is to just use static methods to accomplish that. So you could have a class called, myMath. I'll just call it myMath. And I'll never really instantiate this at all. I'm not going to bother with a constructor. I'll just add static methods. I'll do simple, dumb ones like add. Add expects two numbers, and it returns A plus B. And then I can have subtract or multiply. I'll call it multiply. And it returns A times B. Again, never instantiating this class ever. Simply making a class to group related functionality together. And I can then call, I think I need to refresh the page, call mymath.add 1 and 2, mymath.multiply. So this is a trivial example. Here's a slightly more complicated example from a real code base. I've got a bunch of API-related methods, and they're all static methods. Get current user, get companies, get company, get jobs, apply to job, log in, sign up, save profile. They're all static methods that exist on this class called Job Finder API. So I call them just with Job Finder API.login or .getCompanies. I could just have those exist as standalone functions, but by making them static methods, I can group them together in a nice usable interface. They're all grouped under this API or this Job Finder API. So that's one way people use static methods, just to kind of group stuff together, related functionality. Another common use case is to create factory methods. We'll often use a static method to help in the creation of a new instance of a class. So I have this basic cat class, right? Doesn't really do anything. Let's add a meow method. It returns, what do we want to do? This.name says meow. Sure. So we have a basic instance method. Every cat has a name and a breed. Now, we may want to add functionality in to register a stray cat. Let's say that we're running a shelter. And when we register a stray cat, we don't know the name. We don't know the breed. So maybe we'll do what a lot of animal shelters do. We just pick basically a random name, and then we'll assign the breed to be, mutt or mixed or unknown or something. I guess you don't really use the term mutt for cats. Anyway, we'll give some sort of breed, and we'll pick a random name. Now, we could just make a function down here called register stray. And register stray can do some stuff like pick a name. So I have a function here just to pick a random element from an array. So I could pick, names, make some names in here. I'll just add some, like muffin. All right, let's say these are my names. Imagine there's a big list of names, a whole database of random names. Well, not quite random, but just names. And then I'm going to pick one by calling this choice function names. This just returns a random element from an array. So it will return a random name. So I'll call this name. And then I will create a new cat where it uses this name, our random name, and then breed will be unknown. And I could return that. And this is now a factory function, right? It returns to me an instance of cat. Register stray returns a new cat. So if I call register stray, this time we get a new cat with the name of Sleepy, breed is unknown. This time we get a cat with the name of Princess Butterface, breed is unknown. So it's working just fine. And there's nothing wrong with leaving this out on its own just as a regular function. But this makes sense to group together with the cat class because it has specifically to do with cats and the creation of a new cat. But it has nothing to do with a particular instance of a cat, right? It's solely concerned with making a new cat. So this is a sort of thing that we could make a static method. we could call this static register stray. Whoops, static. And now the way that we're going to call this is a little different, right? Now we're going to call cat.registerStray. But it makes sense that it lives on the class. It's a static method. It doesn't have to do with a particular instance, right? It's not like this meow method or whatever other methods, adopt or euthanize if we're going to get grim. Maybe that's a method we need on an instance if we're running an animal shelter. But it does help us generate a new instance. It's a factory function to make a new instance of cat. That's a very common use case for static methods. So 2 examples we've seen. One is just use static methods to just group functionality together in some sort of class, just to have a nice, usable group of functions that makes sense to be put together. Another option is to use static methods as factories, as factory functions that generate new instances. I mean, another example would be if we had a class called user, we might have some functionality to register a user, and that might be called, or that might be a static method. Register user, and it expects a username and a password, and this will do some work to register a user and return a new instance of the user class. It's a factory for making users. It could live outside the class, but if it's tied to the class, why not group it in there? So those are 2 common use cases for static methods.